Hi, Kevin. A couple of questions here regarding the quality control that the problems we've been seeing. Maybe you can have something to say about that, like particularly the case breaking after not much use and with nothing really happening to cause the cracks. How's that going to be handled for? Because it's likely going to be happening for a lot of people.
While that is possible and feasible, you got to understand that when you're tooling plastics, there can be a variance in how brittle the plastics are.
I get it, and I'm not blaming anybody here. You know, you have to tool up and get the quality that you need. But
what I will say is, some of the housings are housings that we made a while back. We've made many improvements in that process. We actually delayed the entire production.
Sure, I'm aware of that. Yeah.
And a lot of those. The housings were ones that that formed perfectly, but it turned out they were brittle, too brittle, and they managed to pass, tests like vibration tests and other tests, so they used them. So the degree of brittle is less on more recently made housing.
But let's say that they're more durable, but maybe not that durable. I mean, let's say...
Remember, there are places on a Pimax headset where the thickness of the housing is less than a millimeter in a couple spots.
Yeah, I mean, you want to keep the weight down. I understand all that. It's just a question of, for the backers in particular...
Sure. And you got to keep in mind that the actual defect rate on those housings is really low. It's less than 5%.
It's hard to say based on the feedback in the forum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're talking about anecdotal. I'm talking about actual.
Okay, that's good to know. Good to hear.
Anecdotal is where you see some guy post on a forum, and I get it. If I had a broken housing,
you put it. That's how it always is.
I can tell you, if I had a broken housing, I'd be all over the forums screaming to high heaven. Because I would be upset. But the truth is, the actual number of reports that come back for people who say, hey, I have, and they make a ticket on that particular issue, it's like 3.2%. It's not high.
Okay, so I guess as a backer myself, it'd be good to hear from you directly that if there are issues with the housing, even let's say half a year or maybe a year down the road, if they happen in the part, so you will, all right, and they will be replaced, no problem.
And there are newer housings too where we continually improve that every time we shoot them. So when you shoot the housings,
I expect that it's just the question of where does Pimax sort of draw the line at? Okay, this can't be associated with the quality controls in the initial run. So you will need to pay for any sort of repairs to the unit.
I think we're gonna be pretty
backers in particular
friendly when it comes to that.
I would hope so. Yeah.
But no, and that would be the decision of the U.S. office, which is based in Orlando, largely.
I mean, I would think that
I have the parts to do it, and I'll take care of it. Mm-hmm.
It should be pretty easy, I would think, to identify if a defect is related to these initial issues, because they seem to happen in sort of the same places, right?
It comes down if it looks like it's run over by a truck or not. If it looks like it's been dragged behind the car, then maybe I would say that's not warranty. But if it's a splitting issue, any kind of issue related to splitting, fraying, all of those kinds of things, I think we'll be pretty friendly about it.
All right, great to hear.
Our job is to make people happy. Period.
Oh, I believe that. The response I've seen from Pimax in general, in the forums and everywhere else, is like.
And I'm not a very
good.
I would be considered by most to be not so great a customer, because I get upset quick when it comes to things that don't work and I bought it, especially if I can't return it. Not a fan of those kinds of things. Told that to Pimax on my first day when we started talking about how this stuff would work, and they said great. So no, they were all over wanting to do the thought processes that I have on how things are repaired and replaced, and the systems that are part of that, they believe in. So, and we've been testing them for 2 weeks. I have a system for this that uses tickets generated in the U.S., which would be for Canada and Mexico too.
So will there be a local warehouse here in Canada?
There will be, no, their initial warehouse is in Orlando. And we have another small warehouse in San Jose.
But in terms of shipping and/or border costs and so on, what happens there?
We're gonna the U.S. office won't be open until the beginning of March, the first week. So we're a good month away from that. We do have some people that we've already looped in that are part of the.
So, but what's your expectation that's going to happen? Let's say if there are RMAs that come from here and there's only an office in the States, and am I going to incur additional charges to get the unit looked at?
It depends on when. So it comes down to when we go to our distributed warehouse model, which we have, which I've used before on other things. Then there will be a warehouse in Canada. It'll be this year, but it'll be during the summer.
Okay, so
when we get units in a warehouse in Canada, then yeah, it'll be no problem. They'll just be there. But between say March and July, then we'll have to ship them from Orlando.
But will it be at Pimax's cost or my own?
I would think it'd be depending on the reason. Like I say, I find a unit dragged behind the car with the truck.
I'm not talking about the typical ones, like let's say the pixel problems, the case.
I would say that
kind of stuff.
Almost all these
light bleeding, for example,
will be our nickel.
Yeah. Okay. Great to hear.
I'd say it'd be an extremely high percentage.
I mean, I have to say that with the Vive, which I also own, I had very good experience initially when they were very eager to correct problems. Not so much afterwards.
Right. No, our thing is to build a nice operation here. Have a nice operation in Canada, a nice operation in the U.S., and a warehouse in Mexico as well. So our plan is to have top-notch support. We want to win via support. So eventually, other people will have headsets that have some of the features we do, and some of the resolution that we have, and some of the FOVs that we have. And our plan is to outwork them.
Well, you have my word here that if you do good by the backers, I'll upgrade to AKX or whatever comes next, because I do want to support the company. I just want to make sure that I didn't sort of end up as a.
They initiated this program and brought me in, and are building a system here at pretty good expense for the specific purpose to make sure that people here are taken care of. We have thousands of people here already that have, so it's not like we don't have a pretty good customer base here this moment. We do, and they are people that need to be squared away, and you can't do that from China.
Yep.
It has to be local, or you get angry people. As simple as that. And you got time zones, you got language barriers, you got all kinds of things going back and forth, and that's what they're having to deal with now. They don't always you got to keep in mind, they often don't understand when someone reports something. They often misinterpret what they're saying, and now I'm around to try to help. And many times I've said, "Oh, that's not what they're talking about." They run off the rails in some other direction with what they think needs to be corrected.
I've always thought. I mean, I'm not a backer, but okay, don't film me.
No.
I work for a company that I don't want to be on.
Sure.
I've always thought that some of the issues were cultural differences in the way that business is done. I mean, I'm familiar with business in other parts of the world, so it's understandable.
But clearly, they needed somebody who's kind of a native speaker and somebody that's a little bit technical to
yeah, I don't know. That's great. I mean, it was my expectation that this would happen. But your words are comforting, at least to myself, and I hope to other backers who hear you.
They have a pretty good. I would just say that they've made a pretty significant commitment to this, and to bring me in and to build the team here and to build offices here and warehouses here and all the infrastructure that you need. It's not cheap, and it's something that it's a big deal for a small company to do. HTC, they're a much larger company than we are, and I hope that we can compete for people's business against the bigger guys and do it in ways that people can see and understand and experience it. And one way to do that is make sure you have a real person answer the phone when you can call with a question, have very rapid returns and repairs, and implement infrastructure here that people notice. I hope that when a whole bunch of companies have similar things, that people look at Pimax and say, hey, you want to have a trouble-free experience where if something does go wrong, that you'll get squared away and you'll be taken care of. I hope that's a feature that people say that's a good reason to get it. Right now, it's a drawback. Right now, that's just the truth. Right now, if you know,
everybody knows where Pimax started, and it's trying to become a real player here. So
it is, and the only way to do that is to do real player things. You know, and real player things include rapid updates. You know, for bug fixes and get things in there that people ask for. Almost every feature in things like PyTool and our drivers and the things we've been doing with NVIDIA and Valve are specifically come from all the forums, things that people ask for, things that people want to see. You know, almost everything in the pipeline is from that. You know, so when we see something, kind of a reoccurring theme, that goes right on our list of things to analyze to see if it's something we can do. I hope that that's another feature, you know, that people see when, you know, in the next year or two, when there's more similar devices out there, they see that as a reason to get.
Well, another reason that I've personally been pushing for is to open source at least some of the software, or at least allow some external community input into the software pipeline. Not just the firmware, maybe the firmware, maybe not the firmwork.
I'm a fan of open source on some things. I talked to the founder only yesterday about that. When we were working on some things here, and he is very interested in doing things like that. That he wants to. His concern is protect. There's certain nuggets.
I get it. Sure.
That are kind of
IP for them.
Us that he feels like are very fundamental to our success. So he wants to create avenues where we can open source things, but where we protect some of those nuggets. And that was kind of
I mean, you know, down in the really low level stuff, I get that. But let's say things that are in PyTool or wherever, where there's some sort of usability features that, you know, by the time Pimax would get around, that could be a while. But the community could whip up something.
Yeah, they could do it in a day.
Yeah. You know, I see like a good example of an idea like that would be a model to use. Is what AMD has done with Linux.
With which, sorry?
AMD has done with Linux. What they've done is they created, like in terms of a core proprietary bit, is in the actual kernel driver. And then like the kernel driver can be either interlinked with the proprietary main driver, or you can use an open source driver. So in the same token, they can have it so that, say if you look at OSVR, the idea of a plugin system. So it's like, okay, the main system is using this, and then you can activate plugins. Plugins can use, say, like an SDK to be able to like access certain elements of the hardware directly to do things without, like Kevin saying, and like what Robin's concerned about it actually them having to say, okay, well, this is how we do everything. They'd be able to allow different.
Yeah, I mean, my only, let's say, concern with you know, going maybe that route is that you don't offer a high enough starting point for outside developers. Like if you know, you say, yes, we are going to open source, but you have to start from scratch. Here's the specs to the hardware and go for it. And what? In how many years will you see something?
Yeah, no, that was specifically, you know, what the founder Robin was talking about. He goes, well, you know, you want to kind of curate the code and go in and comment everything and have it and create things that people can begin from, where they can understand what we were doing. Right now, we haven't done any of those kinds of things. So, you know, right now, you know, we're just cranking out, you know, bug fixes and new versions as fast as we can, and then go through the testing process and then release it. And we don't have as many layers as an HTC would have or an Oculus would have when it comes to some of those things. So when we do some of those kinds of things where you open it up, he wants to go in and have the engineering team stop with the updates for just a little bit, and then go in and try to curate the whole thing so that you can, so that the developers have some sort of, you know what you're thinking and what you're trying to do and all of that.